Unless you're living under a rock, you know that Call of Duty Warzone has bled into every single facet of the franchise. What started as a second go at Treyarch's Blackout turned into a giant monster that consumed everything we know and love, including campaign, multiplayer, and the focus of today's video, zombies. As you can probably see from the title of this video, I'm going to talk about how the zombies mode evolved from being a mysterious anomaly somehow tied to the Call of Duty franchise, to losing much of its identity and becoming just another mode in a progressively stale franchise, and you can probably guess what I'm blaming as the cause for this. Before we can jump right into Warzone though, it's important to establish what zombies was before Warzone so that we can evaluate the changes. Call of Duty Zombies was, for quite a long time, defined by how bizarre its existence was. This mode, by all accounts, makes almost no sense existing attached to the Call of Duty franchise. The only real thing that is directly shared between zombies and the rest of the game was the weapon selection. Almost everything else was repurposed or reimagined, and, if you bar all context, I doubt most people would guess that it's from Call of Duty at all. So much so that in World at War, zombies wasn't even a button on the main menu, you had to go in the campaign level select to play it. Another zombies staple that is an anomaly is the way in which guidance was given. Simply put, zombies had almost no guidance up until Black Ops 4. Nothing in the game other than the character quotes, which were often obscure, told you anything about what you had to do other than surviving. This is a complete and total opposite of the rest of the franchise. If you recall the late 2000s and mid-2010s, Call of Duty was known as the simple shooter that's easy for anyone to get into, contrasting the more hardcore experience that you get out of playing something like Battlefield instead. With that in mind, you can probably see why the difficulty here is bizarre, and it almost feels like to me, the Zombies team was completely unmoderated by project managers and had extensive freedoms that the rest of the teams probably did not. This continued for an extremely long time. Only in 5 did the campaign and zombies cross, though with hindsight we know that this is an alternate timeline of the campaign and bears little weight on the greater story of zombies. Not until Exo-Zombies in 2014 did the mode begin to resemble the rest of the game, that being by adding exosuits to both the player and the zombies of the first map, Outbreak. No, not that Outbreak. And then in the third map, Carrier, multiplayer objectives like defusing bombs and shooting soldiers. This, however, was an outlier at the time, and Treyarch did not follow suit with their next title. Black Ops 3 took significant steps away from the rest of Call of Duty, proving to be even more of an interdimensional anomaly that didn't belong next to campaign and multiplayer. Where that was set in 2065 with jetpacks and energy guns, zombies was still only set in the 20th century. There is technically one scene in the campaign where zombies are briefly present, and a specific zombies remix where enemies are replaced with zombies, but those are not too relevant. Even the soon-to-follow Infinite Warfare zombies kept the classic formula, which was extremely out of place with the rest of the game. Infinite Warfare is set in the far, far future, and its zombies is almost entirely set in the 20th century once again, with the exception of only one map. World War II Zombies is actually somehow even more out of place than World at Wars. The latter game was dark, grey, and gritty, all about the destruction of war and the dark times of humanity. The former, though, is a heroic story which romanticizes war. It attempts to subvert that expectation at the start, but eventually falls into its flaws and becomes a generic World War II shooter rather than a nuanced approach. Because of this, the horror-fueled zombies approach is, once again, a polar opposite to the theming of the rest of the game. While Sledgehammer once again tried to push some objectives with the tortured path, the rest of the mode once again focused on traditional zombies ideas. Sledgehammer really has a thing for objectives, huh? Black Ops 4 is where we see a very significant shift in zombies that is relevant to our current topic. This game attempted to overhaul the mode into a more Call of Duty experience. Where it failed though is that it only managed to do this in the game's systems and menus, but not in the maps. The maps were more complex than ever, and streamlined systems were implemented to onboard new players. 2 whole tutorials, a create a class, spawning with 8 different wonder weapons, anytime use get out of jail free elixirs, different game modes, the list goes on and on. So we're up to Black Ops 4. The maps are more complex than ever, but the gameplay has turned into a casual mush. You might think, well yeah, but that's not Warzone. We're getting there, don't worry. What's important about Black Ops 4 is the emphasis on accessibility, attempting to appeal to the lowest common denominator type of player. Ironically, they failed, and the game is still probably the most complex experience in franchise history to date, but that is a topic for a different video. Now, 2020, Warzone releases and it becomes extremely popular. Changes are made from Blackout, which include adding rarity to weapons, allowing custom loadouts to be collected, randomized attachments, an armor plate system, parachutes instead of wingsuits, etc., etc. Moving a few months forward though, Black Ops Cold War releases. A new storyline reboot is implemented, and zombies is now canon to the Black Ops campaign timeline, not just its own side mode. The main characters of this mode are Samantha Maxis and Gregory Weaver, who has never been seen in zombies to date. Fun fact, actually, Weaver is actually the guy in the window in the main menu in Black Ops. Later, Kravchenko is also introduced from the campaign. The story is conveyed through these characters rather than the usual player characters. The biggest issue in that sentence is that zombies now takes place in the Black Ops timeline. To get an understanding of how this is relevant, let me briefly explain the relevant timeline now. As you can see here, Zombies is canon to Warzone as well, because Warzone is canon to Cold War, and Cold War is canon to the rest of the series. Yes, in case you were wondering, Black Ops 2, 3, and 4 are still canon to this day in 2024, though we don't necessarily know the canon ending of Black Ops 2. This also means that Kravchenko is dead, as he is killed by either Mason or Woods, and won't be in Gulf War Zombies unless Treyarch decides to retcon Black Ops 2. Given the amount of Black Ops 2 content that has been added to Modern Warfare 3 lately, I don't think they'll be retconning it. The method that Treyarch used to get around this limit is by establishing contained outbreak zones, meaning that the zombies we fight in maps are confined only to that specific area, and the rest of the world is perfectly safe. Story tangent aside, the gameplay is even more overhauled than the story is. Players can now spawn in with any gun they want, as weapons are now ranked based on rarity rather than the weapon itself having any sort of inherent value. Players now play as random characters, which are equivalent to nameless marines with little to no personality. A minimap is added, Warzone's armor system is added, the perk limit is removed, a compass is added, on-screen indicators tell players how to turn on the power or get pack-a-punch, death perception is made into a real perk, kill streaks can be purchased at a table, and self-revives are unlimited. Out-of-game progression now exists to upgrade every match, interactable items glow and are far more apparent than before, players can use emotes, weapons drop on the ground like Warzone ones, and the list goes on. Point is, insane dramatic overhauls towards casual players were implemented. Going back a bit to the operator selection, this is actually not a first for the mode. World War II Zombies did have a set cast, but also allowed players to choose from a bunch of different characters, and Infinite Warfare did as well. The only difference is that World War II's characters are all throwaway NPCs, and Infinite Warfare's are actual characters relating to the story. Still though, both of these games had a main cast. Cold War technically does have a main canon cast, but that is purely because there needs to be one for the sake of the story. None of the canon characters have any unique dialogue or elements which cement them as the main cast, they are just randomly picked operators that were used for the initial reveal trailer. The problem with this system is, as you can guess, it becomes much more difficult to feel attached to the characters and the story. In Black Ops 3, you felt so attached to the story because your journey was killing the characters you played as years ago and adored so much. Here, like I said earlier, the technical cast is Weaver, Gray, Strauss, and Carver. These four characters relay all of the typical information that our player characters would say, but over a radio instead, referring to the players as Strike Team. This begs the question, why aren't these four the characters we're playing as? That's a great question, and the answer is simply Warzone. I actually wouldn't mind playing as these characters, I love Weaver in particular, but the Warzone store bundles are the reason why. I'm sure we can all agree, whether you particularly care for the Cold War crew or not, that playing as them is more impactful than just listening to them. The operators we play as are usually lifeless and have extremely generic quotes which hold no real personality or weight. Oftentimes, the characters actually don't even have many zombies lines at all. This isn't technically from Cold War, but Rick Grimes, you know, the guy from the Zombies show, only has like literally 8 voice lines. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This operator talk brings up the greater topic of microtransactions in zombies and the franchise as a whole. In the past, microtransactions in zombies have been mostly exclusive. Gobblegums in Black Ops 3 and elixirs in Black Ops 4 are wholly unique to zombies, having absolutely nothing to do with multiplayer other than being purchasable with COD points. In World War II, zombie consumables are obtained via a special supply drop earned specifically in the zombies mode. They do give you multiplayer items as well, but the multiplayer supply drops don't give you zombies items. In Infinite Warfare, you have a card system similar to elixirs, but you also have weapon kits which have extreme gameplay altering effects. Once again, these variants are obtainable in both zombies and multiplayer supply drops. The difference between this and World War II, though, is that in World War II, the weapon variants had no bearing on performance, only on visual aesthetics. The variants in Infinite Warfare are genuinely very overpowered and go surprisingly unnoticed by the community for doing things like being able to drop a nuke every 100 kills or so. Cold War Zombies has no microtransactions other than the traditional store operator bundles, which are purely cosmetic. This is relevant because store bundles are incentives for new players to play zombies, because people who spend dozens of dollars in the store would be upset that they can't use their items in zombies and wouldn't want to play it. That was just a really quick breakdown of those microtransactions up until Cold War, but I'll probably make a bigger video on that topic in the future. While sure, Black Ops 4 and Blackout planted the seeds for Warzone, I think I've made it extremely clear that Warzone had an insane influence on zombies. I think, though, that Cold War Zombies is actually probably more of a reactionary response to the disdain towards Black Ops 4, and just so happens to include Warzone features. Obviously, Black Ops 4 Zombies was berated for how unfriendly it was to casuals, and thus Cold War turned the needle and overcompensated towards the casual player base. The addition of the Rampage Inducer later into the season confirms that even the developers thought it was too casual. Some of the Warzone-esque features are probably intentional, and some of them are probably coincidental. Why it's important, though, is that this casual shift brought the Zombies mode significantly closer to the realm of the rest of Call of Duty compared to how it used to be. While that is interesting, what's even more interesting is Cold War's DLC 2, Outbreak. If you're watching this video, I probably don't need to explain Outbreak to you. The open world concept of zombies was not created by Warzone, it's been an idea since Transit in 2012. It was just finally able to be realized. The objectives in the mode resemble contracts from Warzone, although a little bit more creative. The maps weren't zombified, but were mostly just repurposed straight from Fireteam and multiplayer. For a first draft of an open world mode that's different than normal, this is actually a commendable try, I think. Cold War also had a mode called Onslaught, which let you basically play zombies straight up on multiplayer maps, yet another link to multiplayer, which is linked to Warzone as well. Moving forward to Vanguard, the objectives of Outbreak were taken and placed on a small map which resembled a traditional round-based one, and the reception was extremely poor. Both Duranfang and Terra Maledicta were objective-based like Outbreak, and the backlash caused Treyarch to add round-based back in. Interestingly enough, Vanguard actually rolled back on many of the Warzone features from before. Weapon colors were taken away and replaced with a simple pack-a-punch system. Perk upgrades and field upgrades were just upgraded in-game and not out-of-game. Microtransactions here are identical to Cold War, just operator and weapon bundles. Now let's move forward to our next and current game at the time of this video, Modern Warfare 3. Here, the entire mode is just simply played on the Warzone map with an orange filter. That's it. This section might be more aptly named the DMZ-ification of Call of Duty Zombies, but that doesn't really sound all that cool, so literally there are multiple times where the DMZ logo will pop up instead of the MWZ one. Mechanically, this game is mostly identical to Cold War, except the armor system is no longer accessed through a menu, but rather just using armor plates on the floor. Players complete contracts, which are mostly just repurposed from DMZ, and that is the core gameplay flow until a storm comes in and pushes the players out to an exfil. Stashes and looting systems are taken from DMZ, NPC soldiers roam around and drive vehicles, and they have strongholds around the map, also from DMZ. What the game claims is the second hardest boss is just a gunfight with NPCs with no zombies involved. This mode is really just DMZ with zombies added. If you showed it to someone and told them it was a limited time game mode for Warzone, they would wholeheartedly believe you. In case you just stick to zombies and don't know what DMZ is, I'll briefly explain it here for you. Basically, it was an extraction mode in Modern Warfare 2, which was based on the Warzone map. Players would loot items for money and complete contracts and quests and try to exfil on a helicopter to keep their valuables, otherwise they'd lose them. Sound familiar? It was a Warzone spinoff that in my opinion was actually kind of underrated, and I am sad that they cut support for it, but that does not excuse its blatant reuse here. It's also noteworthy that DMZ was free as part of Warzone, whereas Modern Warfare 3 is actually paid and cannot be accessed for free as a DMZ replacement. If there were any time for them to experiment with free-to-play zombies, it would have been here. I definitely would have been interested to see how popular the mode would have got if it was free, but because Activision wanted a $70 premium title, it needed a third mode, and we will probably never see that feature now. This video is about Warzoneification, but I have not actually defined that term yet. Here, I will for you. Warzoneification is casual, mainstream, streamlined slop designed for a mass appeal for a mass audience with less brain cognition than a 4-month-old Crunchwrap Supreme. This mode is designed for every single person who plays Call of Duty, not for people who play Call of Duty Zombies. Not even Vanguard did that. Vanguard's faults were mostly due to technical issues and time constraints. This is just straight up designed to not be a zombies mode. It is not at all a stretch of the imagination to say that this is not zombies with a DMZ twist, it is just DMZ with a zombies twist. Simply put, the people who should be the target audience of this game are not. This is not a video game designed for people with extensive learning disabilities who can't use their eyeballs. While Warzone bled into zombies in Cold War, Modern Warfare 3 is quite clearly a full-on blatant takeover. Through and through, this is Warzone. The map hasn't been altered at all other than the skybox. The guns you pick up off the floor all have identical colors to Warzone. It goes on and on. Season 2 of Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone was even a zombies-themed season despite having almost no zombies content for the actual mode. Obviously, I have been very negative so far. You might think, well, surely there must be some sort of positives from entering the Warzone world, right? Believe me, I have asked myself this. What positives can we glean from this mode? My initial thought was that because Warzone usually gets most of the content updates, we'd actually be seeing frequent new content, new contracts, new maps, new seasonal events, new features added in alongside Warzone, all those kinds of things. Well, somehow, no. The current iteration of Warzone has 6 whole maps, that's right. Al Mazrah, Urzikstan, Vondel, Ashika Island, Rebirth Island, and Fortune's Keep. Again, remember that the zombies maps aren't completely reworked like they used to be. These are straight ports with a different skybox and loot tables added to random items, that's it. Al Mazrah exists in small chunks in the form of Dark Ether rifts, but I think we can agree that I'd rather have one big Dark Ether rift that is just all of Al Mazrah, all of Rebirth Island, all of the other maps. Think. There are 6 maps. We launch with 1. Add the other 5 over the course of the seasons. Nope. Unless you're interested in more operator bundles, there is no benefit here from crossing with Warzone. Modern Warfare 3 has also recently added microtransactions to zombies once again, though they are in a new form. You can earn consumables through the Battle Pass or buying them in the store, and you can earn extra operator slots through certain store bundles. The key thing you might notice here is that Activision found a way to make zombies microtransactions intermingle with the Warzone ones too. No longer are they separated, now they are one lump sum, which cements that operators aren't going anywhere for zombies. The mode has also, as of Season 2, been mostly abandoned and receives minimal content updates that are just copy-pastes of each other and not emphasizing any real important content besides the continuing narrative. I hope I've made clear to you how the mode has fallen to Warzone features. If I had to pick the biggest impact against the gameplay, it's probably the difficulty curve. While Black Ops 4 had its own difficulty issues, Cold War, Vanguard, and Modern Warfare 3 have large difficulty spike issues where the progression does not feel natural. Most often, the difficulty is too easy, and if it is ever too hard, it is always followed by a large and unnatural spike which makes it feel unfair. What can we do about it in the future? Well, I think I have an amazing solution that will actually line up with Treyarch or Activision's ideas about what Call of Duty should be, and will not at all be an impractical addition to the mode. Quite simply, I think I have the solution that could genuinely save Gulf War zombies for all of us. But this is a pretty long video, and that's a much larger topic for a different video, one coming very soon. I encourage you to subscribe if you want to see it as well, because when you really think about it, the solution I have makes so much sense, and it's crazy that it hasn't already been implemented. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Comment your thoughts below, and feedback is always appreciated, and I hope the rest of your day is amazing and beautiful, unlike this mode nowadays.